Hello, I'm Otto Tausk, Music Director of the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra, and with us this week is Cris Derksen. It's wonderful to have you with the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra. Such a multi-artist is so inspiring, so very welcome with us. We've just been rehearsing 3 of your works. How was that?
It was so lovely to play with so many folks after 2 years of mostly playing in my living room for folks. Yeah, it's so lovely to be making music with humans and to feel the spirit of that.
Yeah, I felt the spirit of your music very, very strong in rehearsal. And you're a cellist, you're a composer, you're a singer, you work the drum computer with your big toe.
Yeah.
Many talents. But where does it all come from? Where does all this artist influences, where does it originate?
I think it all originates from my perspective of the world of being half Indigenous and half European. I'm half Cris and half Mennonite. I like to call myself a Crinonite. I originally come from Treaty 8 in northern Alberta. It's about 975 kilometers north of Edmonton, but still in Alberta. So it's like a good 10-hour drive. And so I think a lot of my own music comes from my perspective of this dichotomy of living in 2000 and now, in 2020, whatever, as an Indigenous person and as a settler, creating art that speaks to both sides, and it's very Canadian, really. It speaks to a lot of Canadian.
Yeah, I find that really interesting to hear you say that, because I'm relatively new to Canada, and your music is very new to me. But somehow I feel it's very rooted in Canadian world, in the Canadian language, in the people, in the country, in nature as well. Mm-hmm. Do you feel that strongly?
Definitely. I think everything can be an influence, so definitely nature is an influence, but also musically, I like hip hop and I like pop music, and I also incorporate, Indigenous idioms into it, as well as the history of classical music that I've learned through time into the work that I do. Mm. I like to call it braiding the contemporary and the traditional over and over and over again. And you braid it so much it becomes something new.
Right. So how does it start when you write music, when you make music? Do you sit down and do you kind of come up with new ideas, or are you inspired by what you hear and what goes on in the world? I
think the best works that come from me are works when I am not paying attention to what I'm doing. So when I'm sitting with the cello or sitting at a piano and just kind of noodling around, and you get into after I've practiced, after I've played what I need to learn or what I need to work on, it's kind of you let the ego go and you take yourself out of the picture, and that's when I think the real cool things come to me. I was just listening to Sinead O'Connor talk about this on a podcast, and she was also a song comes to me, and it might not come in fully to me, but it'll come to me over and over and over again, that I remember it, and it starts to live in me. And I think with my work too, I write lots of things that don't stick. I'm if I like it, if I like it that day, that's pretty cool. If I remember it the next day, then that's really, really cool. And then if I remember it in a month, then it probably will stick. But there's a lot of things that are fleeting and are only there for a moment. But that's also very different from a lot of my work now, because I am so busy with commissions and with works for theater and dance and film. So then that's a different story too, because there's an outside influence dictating the direction of the work. Right. So that actually influences your work. It changes your work. Entirely. There's very few commissions that are do whatever you want. Right. There's parameters to everything, even if it's the amount of players that are in the ensemble. there's parameters to, like, if it's for a film, like where the director wants to go. For dance, what the choreographer wants. There's always like.
So how do you do that when you work with, like, let's say for a film? Do you watch the film and then compose your music according to the film, or because I always wonder how composers do that, because what I feel with you as a composer, you have a very strong idea about the music you're making, and it's very personal. It's very unique in a certain way, and then suddenly when you have to kind of match some other art form like dance or film, or it kind of puts you in a certain direction.
Definitely, it puts you a little bit in a box. You're trying to see, like, a director, it's trying to talk about music is a difficult thing. It's a feeling. It is not tangible, you can't touch it. You can talk colors, you can talk feelings, but you never really know if it's the right thing until it's the right thing. So with composing for film, a lot of it is pretty quick. The jobs are short windows. So it's a lot of ideas that get thrown to the wall and be like, do you like this? Do you like this? Do you like this? For sure, I mean, you talk about, like, I have a strong direction of where I want my own music to go, and I am a Taurus and an Aries. So I'm the year of the ram and the bull. So when I'm right, I'm usually right. So that can come into. So
talking about the future of music. So do you have any thoughts about maybe the future of music in general, or your place, your music in the future of music?
I mean, we're in a really cool time in Canada. There's a lot of really difficult things happening within Canada's Indigenous story that are coming out, all of the unearthings, this talk about reconciliation and where are we. I think with COVID, it allowed the larger institutions to take a moment to step back and be like, how are we looking like Canada? And this is something I've been saying for a really long time, is that music that comes out of all institutions should look more like Canada. It should be more colored. It should be definitely represented by folks of color, by Indigenous folks, by queer folks. You know, I think there's such a breadth of music that is missing from classical stages.
There's the missing part, but do you also believe, because I do personally believe, that music can actually be a driving force in our society and be kind of
directive. Yeah, I fully agree. And I think, like, with the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra this year, you folks have a lot of my friends. You're working with Ian Couson, with Andrew Belfour, a lot of my Indigenous composer friends. And I think it's a really exciting time for all of Canada to create programs that represent Canada.
Right. So about your music, what I really like about your music and what I experience now during the rehearsal today is that it has a tremendous rhythmical drive. When I looked at your scores, when I received them, I thought immediately, okay, so the pulse, the rhythm is really important. But then when I saw and heard you play today on stage, you're very physical in your rhythmical, let's say, input. And is rhythm a really important element of your music for you, or?
Definitely. I think, like, also thinking about, like, Indigenous works and the powwow drum, and how the powwow drum is such a driving large force that's like the heartbeat of music for Indigenous folks. So definitely rhythm is so important. And the one thing about orchestral powwow, that we're not doing orchestral powwow entirely here, but I have a large drum in the middle of the orchestra, but I don't have a conductor. I just have the Indigenous drum, and that's the heartbeat that the European players have to follow.
Yeah.
So a little metaphor on how I think Canada should be working is listening to the heartbeat of the Indigenous folk.
Right. So you talk about powwow. What is powwow?
Powwow is an Indigenous gathering. It's a competition. It's very much an economic source of revenue for folks that do the powwow trail. It is very much an alive contemporary art. Yes, it is traditional, but on the powwow circuit, folks are writing their own powwow music daily. Yeah, and these folks can compete for lots of money. A powwow drum can easily get $30K for a gig for winning their competition. So it's definitely an economic force. It's a very live. Yes, it's traditional, but it's an alive tradition.
So it's interesting to when we look at the program, we have Dvorak's New World Symphony. We have the pictures at the exhibition.
Yeah.
Is this music that you connect with in any way?
Definitely. Mussorgsky is one of my favorite composers. I have always really loved his romanticism, his creativity. I know all of his works didn't get fully finished in his own time, but he was so creative in where he was going. And I also he was a big partier and really anti-establishment, but really had such strong convictions that I really appreciate in his work. And it's so dramatic. Yeah. And with Dvorak, I was reading the program just before, and we were talking, Dvorak was well, I think the Negro spirituals should be the song of the country. And I'm look at pop music. It is the song of the country. It is, pop music comes straight from that. So Dvorak was right.
Yeah, definitely right. Yeah. So do you see yourself more in the pop music?
Oh man, no.
No.
I feel I live in so many different art worlds. And when I was growing up, folks would be oh, you're so out of the box. But I'm so out of the box that I'm in every single box. So I'm not fully in the pop industry of Canada, or I'm not fully in the classical industry or the art world industry, but I am in all of them. And I do get invited to all of the different, occasions. I've played at art galleries the NGO, the National Gallery of Canada, and playing here, playing in all of the bars. And I just, because I'm so diverse, I get invited into all the different places. So it's not I'm excluded. I'm actually included everywhere.
Well, that's fantastic, and I think it's really wonderful that having you as an artist with the orchestra, we kind of broaden our horizon immensely, and hopefully also reach audiences that might not get the idea of going to a symphony concert in the first place, and they know you, and now they see you suddenly with a symphony orchestra.
Yeah.
And I must say that for us, it makes us feel enriched in a wonderful way. So what is it you really hope to be doing in the future with music? So what's the?
I think I'm always pushing up and pulling up Indigenous artists and in the Indigenous voice.
Yes.
And I really think it's the time where if an organization is doing a larger Indigenous project, an Indigenous person has to be the lead artistically in it. And I've been pushing towards this for a really long time. And it's all coming into place, and it's happening more and more. And I feel my job as an artist is to continue opening those doors, but also keeping them open for my friends to join in. It's a lot of that.
Yeah. Well, Cris, thank you so much for being with us this week.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for your inspiring music and your inspiring personality.
It's
really
nice
great to have you.
Be back in Vancouver.
Great.
I lived here for 12 years.
All right.
So it's a bit of a homecoming.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.